Digital Crime Defense Institute, DCDI, presents Information Integrity and the Value of Knowledge in the Era of Generative AI, a documentary on how generative AI is reshaping truth, trust, authorship, evidence, and knowledge, and why the future belongs to those who can prove what they know. There was a time when knowledge carried weight because it was hard-earned. A report meant research, a photograph meant evidence, a citation meant scholarship, a voice meant presence. A signature meant accountability. But in the age of generative AI, the cost of producing convincing information has collapsed. Text, images, voices, videos, legal arguments, scientific summaries, strategic advice, and even emotional persuasion can now be generated at industrial speed. The danger is not only that machines can create falsehood. The deeper danger is that they can create plausibility without provenance, fluency without understanding, authority without accountability, and confidence without evidence. This is the new crisis of knowledge, and at the center of it is one damaged principle: integrity. At DCDI, we are not anti-technology. We are pro-human safety, pro-trust, pro-knowledge, and pro-accountability. Generative AI is one of the most powerful tools humanity has created. But every powerful tool changes the risk equation. The calculator changed arithmetic, the internet changed access to information, social media changed public discourse. But Gen AI is different because it can simulate cognition, authorship, evidence, expertise, and even consensus. That means the attack surface has expanded. It is no longer only systems, networks, databases, and identities. It is perception, judgment, trust, memory, knowledge, and meaning. The greatest risk is not that people will use AI. The greatest risk is that people will stop verifying what AI produces. What do you trust anymore? Every day, billions of pieces of information flow through our devices, our institutions, our minds, news articles, research papers, medical advice, legal precedent, financial data, the very fabric of how we understand the world. But what happens when the machine that generates knowledge can no longer be trusted to tell the truth? What happens when the compass is corrupted? We are living through a fundamental disruption, not just of technology, but of epistemology itself, of how we know what we know. Generative AI systems can now produce text, images, video, audio, and data that is indistinguishable from the real. They can fabricate citations, mimic experts, synthesize entire bodies of false evidence, and they do it in milliseconds at scale with perfect grammatical confidence. The question is no longer whether this is happening. It is happening right now across every sector, every institution, every decision-making process that relies on information. The question is, what do we do about it? At the Digital Crime Defense Institute, the DCDI, researchers and practitioners have been studying this question with urgent precision. The DCDI's work centers on a concept most people associate with cybersecurity: the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, availability. 3 pillars of information security that have guided the field for decades. But in the era of generative AI, one of those pillars has been shattered beyond recognition. Integrity, the guarantee that information is accurate, unaltered, and can be trusted, is now the most compromised principle in the digital landscape. When a generative AI system produces a document, a dataset, an image, a voice recording, there is no inherent marker of truth, no timestamp of origin, no chain of custody, no way to verify whether what you are reading, hearing, or seeing reflects reality, or a very convincing simulation of it. This is not a future risk. This is the present condition. Consider the implications across sectors. In healthcare, AI-generated medical literature can influence treatment decisions. In law, synthetically produced documents can be submitted as evidence. In finance, fabricated analyst reports can move markets. In education, students submit AI-written work that their teachers cannot distinguish from their own. The value of knowledge, real, verifiable, trustworthy knowledge, is being systematically eroded, and with it, our ability to make good decisions.
The security community has always understood integrity as a technical property. But what we are seeing now is integrity as an epistemological crisis. When you cannot trust the provenance of information, you cannot build reliable knowledge. And when you cannot build reliable knowledge, every decision, personal, professional, institutional, becomes a gamble. Generative AI has made it trivially easy to produce convincing falsehoods at industrial scale. The challenge is not just detection, it is rebuilding the frameworks through which we assign trust to information in the first place.
But for many people, generative AI is not a threat. It is a tool, a partner, an amplifier of human capability. Entrepreneurs, engineers, and innovators around the world have embraced these systems to build faster, think deeper, and reach further than ever before. For them, the promise of Gen AI is not about deception, it is about democratization. Small teams can now compete with large enterprises. Solo creators can produce studio-quality content. Researchers can synthesize decades of literature in hours. The barriers between idea and execution have never been lower. And yet this same power that amplifies human potential also amplifies human error and human malice.
Every tool that a good faith entrepreneur uses to build is also available to a bad actor who wants to deceive. The question is not whether these tools are good or bad. The question is, who is responsible for ensuring they are used with integrity? I think the real opportunity in Gen AI is not just efficiency. It is expanding what individual human beings can know and do. But that only works if the information feeding those systems is sound. Garbage in, garbage out, but now at a scale and a speed that no one has experienced before. The builders have a responsibility, not just to ship fast, but to think carefully about what happens when their tools encounter the real world, with all its complexity, its bad actors, its ambiguity.
The legal system was built on the assumption that evidence is real, that a document is what it purports to be, that a photograph captures a moment in time, that a voice recording contains the actual words spoken by an actual person. Generative AI has made every one of those assumptions questionable. Deepfakes, synthetic contracts, AI-generated testimony, fabricated audit trails, these are not hypothetical scenarios. They are already appearing in courtrooms, in regulatory proceedings, in corporate disputes, in criminal investigations around the world. The challenge for lawmakers and regulators is profound. The law operates in time, legislation takes months or years to pass. AI capabilities evolve in weeks. We are trying to regulate a river with a map of where it used to flow. And yet doing nothing is not an option. The legal and regulatory frameworks we build, or fail to build, today will determine whether generative AI becomes a tool for justice or a weapon of injustice.
What we are grappling with is the collapse of what I call evidentiary integrity. The legal system's entire architecture is built on trust in evidence, and that trust was always imperfect. People forge documents, people lie, but the scale and the sophistication that AI enables is categorically different. We need new standards for authentication, new chains of custody for digital content, new liability frameworks for AI-generated outputs, and we needed them yesterday.
Beyond the courts and the boardrooms, the impact of this integrity crisis is felt by ordinary people every day. The professional who relies on an AI summary of a competitor's report, not knowing it was hallucinated. The patient who receives a treatment recommendation influenced by synthetic medical data. The student whose understanding of history is shaped by AI-generated content that mixes fact with fabrication. For individuals and organizations alike, the stakes are real. Decisions made on corrupted information have real consequences. Careers, health, finances, reputations, all vulnerable. For corporations, the exposure is existential. An AI system that ingests unverified data and generates flawed strategic intelligence can lead a company to make catastrophic decisions. And when things go wrong, who is accountable? The AI, the developer, the executive who deployed it? This is not an abstract liability question. It is a practical, urgent challenge that organizations must address now before they discover the cost of not doing so. So what is the solution? How do we restore integrity to knowledge in the age of generative AI? At the DCDI, researchers have developed a structured response to this challenge, a framework that addresses not just the technical dimensions of the problem, but the human, institutional, and legal dimensions as well. It is called the IKITE framework. IKITE stands for the integrity of knowledge, identity, traceability, and evidence. It is a comprehensive approach to ensuring that information can be verified, that its origin can be established, and, like the principle of aerodynamics, a kite flies only when tension, structure, wind, and control work together. In the Gen AI era, knowledge also needs controlled tension. Between innovation and verification, automation and accountability, speed and evidence, creativity and truth, that the chain of custody from creation to use is transparent and auditable. Knowledge. Do we know what we think we know, and can we prove it? Identity. Who created this information, and can we verify that provenance? Traceability. Can we follow the path from original source to current form and identify every transformation along the way? Evidence. Does this information meet the standards required to support a decision, a legal proceeding, a policy, a medical intervention? The iKite framework is not just a checklist, it is a philosophy of information stewardship. The idea that in a world where AI can generate anything, the only way to preserve the value of knowledge is to be rigorous and intentional about how we verify, trace, and authenticate what we claim to know. Organizations that adopt this framework are not just protecting themselves from AI-generated misinformation. They are building a culture of epistemic responsibility. A culture where the question, where does this come from and can we trust it, is asked before every significant decision. We began with a question, what do you trust anymore? It is tempting to answer that question with despair, to look at the flood of synthetic content, the erosion of institutional authority, the speed at which misinformation travels, and conclude that trust is no longer possible. But that is not the lesson of this moment. The lesson is that trust has always required work. It has always required verification, critical thinking, institutional accountability, and the courage to ask hard questions. Generative AI has not changed that requirement. It has simply made the stakes higher and the need more urgent. We can navigate this fog, but not with a corrupted compass. The path forward requires frameworks like iKite. It requires technologists, legal experts, policymakers, and ordinary citizens to engage seriously with the question of information integrity. It requires that we hold AI systems and the organizations that deploy them to account. Because in the end, the value of knowledge is not abstract. It is the foundation on which we build everything else. Our decisions, our institutions, our society, our future. Guard it accordingly. Knowledge now needs nutritional labeling. Some content is protein, some is sugar, and some is poison in elegant packaging. iKite, a futuristic framework for re-establishing information integrity and the value of knowledge. This is why DCDI proposes the iKite framework: integrity of knowledge, identity, traceability, and evidence. The future belongs not to those who produce the most content, but to those who can prove what they know. When knowledge loses integrity, digital safety loses direction, science loses credibility, governance loses legitimacy, and society loses its navigation compass. Knowledge, therefore, must be verifiable again.